You know that moment when your ex-boyfriend shows up at your door with his Instagram-filtered replacement and announces you have 72 hours to vacate the premises? Yeah, me neither. Until last Tuesday at 6:47 p.m., when Bowen Sterling, age 33, electrical contractor extraordinaire, decided to cosplay as a landlord with his 24-year-old influencer girlfriend Roxy clinging to his arm like a sage green accessory. My name is Faye Morrison. I'm 30. And I've been a bookkeeper at Henderson & Associates in Fort Worth, Texas for the past 6 years, which means I know exactly how money works, how contracts work, and how spectacularly idiotic people can be when they think having their name on a deed makes them invincible. Faye, we need to talk, Bowen announced, standing in the doorway of the 2-bedroom apartment on Magnolia Avenue like he owned the place, which, legally speaking, he did. His name was on the title, the mortgage, every piece of paperwork. I'd been living there for 3 years, 2 while we were together, 1 after we broke up, paying him $800 monthly in rent that was really just helping with his mortgage payment. Roxy peeked around his shoulder, her highlighted hair catching the hallway light, wearing what I can only describe as athleisure that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Everything about her screamed curated aesthetic, matching sage green sports bra and leggings, those chunky white sneakers that every influencer apparently gets issued at some secret warehouse, and a Stanley cup the size of a fire hydrant. "Hi," she chirped, like we were meeting at a coffee shop instead of at the scene of my impending homelessness. "I'm Roxy. I've heard so much about you." "I bet you have," I thought, forcing a smile. "Charming. Bowen, what's this about?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable for approximately 2.3 seconds before his jaw set in that stubborn way I'd learned to recognize during arguments about whose turn it was to clean the bathroom. "Look, I'll be straight with you. Roxy and I are moving in together. Here, this is my apartment, and I need you out in 72 hours. The audacity. The audacity. This man, this electrician who couldn't properly wire a 3-way switch without calling his supervisor, was serving me an eviction notice like I was some kind of squatter. 72 hours, I repeated slowly, letting the word settle. That's not even legal, Bowen. Texas requires 30 days minimum notice for— I checked with my buddy who's a paralegal, he interrupted. And oh, a paralegal. How official. Since you don't have a lease and you're not paying market rent, I can ask you to leave whenever I want. You're basically a guest who's overstayed. Roxy nodded enthusiastically, clearly thrilled to be part of this power move. We already ordered furniture. It's being delivered Saturday. The sectional alone was $4,000, and it's this gorgeous sage color that'll really open up the space. $4,000 for a couch. $4,000. Meanwhile, this man still owed me money for the privilege of owning this apartment in the first place. But I didn't say that. Not yet. Okay, I said calmly, watching Bowen's face register surprise that I wasn't fighting. 72 hours. I'll be out by Friday evening. Really? Roxy beamed. Oh my gosh, that's so mature of you. I told Bowen you'd be cool about this. Some exes are like, so dramatic. I smiled at her. Sweet summer child. No drama here. Just need a few days to pack up 3 years of stuff. Bowen shifted his weight, clearly expecting more resistance. Right. Well, good. I'll be by Friday at 8 p.m. to get my key back. Perfect, I said. I'll have everything out by then. They left, Roxy chattering about paint colors and accent walls, Bowen looking vaguely suspicious that I'd folded so easily. The second the door closed, I walked to my bedroom closet, moved aside the box of winter sweaters, and pulled out a small fireproof safe. Inside, documents, tax returns, bank statements, receipts, and one very, very important piece of paper that Bowen had apparently forgotten existed. 2 years ago, May 15th to be precise, Bowen was $18,000 short on his down payment for this apartment. The seller wouldn't budge, the closing date was locked in, and Bowen was approximately 72 hours away from losing his earnest money deposit and his dream of homeownership. I'd been hesitant. We'd only been dating for 8 months. But he swore up and down he'd pay me back, that this was an investment in our future, that we'd be living here together as a couple building toward marriage. I'll pay you back in 2 years, Max, he'd promised. I'll even put it in writing. And he did. Because I insisted. Because I'm a bookkeeper who understands that money and emotions should never mix without proper documentation. The promissory note was beautifully simple. $18,000 principal, 5% annual interest, the legal minimum in Texas to avoid gift tax implications, 24-month repayment term. Signed, dated, witnessed by my boss Sandra, who notarized it at our office. I pulled out my calculator, an old Texas Instruments BA2 Plus that I'd had since college, and ran the numbers. Principal, $18,000 interest rate, 5% annual, term, 2 years, 24 months. Simple interest calculation, $18,000 x 0 or 5 x 2, $1,800. Total amount due, $19,800. Wait, I recalculated. The note said, simple interest calculated annually, which meant $18,000 x 1.05, $18,900 after year 1, then $18,900 x 1.05, $19,845 after year 2. Actually, let me be precise. $18,000 x 1.05 2 of $19,845. Due date per the contract, May 15th, 2 years after signing. Today's date, September 17th. 4 months and 2 days overdue. I took photos of every page of the promissory note with my phone. Then I made copies on my home printer. Then I called my cousin Derek, who's a collections attorney in Dallas. Derek, hypothetically speaking, if someone owed me almost $20,000 on a promissory note and it was 4 months past due, what would you do? Faye, is this about Bowen? Hypothetically. He laughed. Send a demand letter. Give them 30 days to pay. If they don't, file a lawsuit and get a judgment. Once you have the judgment, you can put a lien on any property they own. Is this property in Texas? Hypothetically, yes. Then you're golden. Texas is very creditor-friendly. You want me to draft the letter? How much? Family discount? $300 for the letter, flat fee. If it goes to court, we'll talk contingency. I packed for 3 days straight. Clothes, kitchen stuff, bathroom supplies, books, my collection of vintage bookkeeper ledgers that I definitely didn't need but couldn't part with. I was methodical, organized, calm. On Friday at 7:30 p.m., 30 minutes before Bowen's arrival, I left one thing on the otherwise empty kitchen counter, a manila envelope. Inside, a certified letter from Derek's law firm, Holloway & Associates, demanding payment of $19,845 within 30 days or facing legal action, including a lien on the property at 2847 Magnolia Avenue, apartment 3B, Fort Worth, Texas. Attached, a notarized copy of the promissory note Bowen had signed. Also attached, a highlighted section of Texas property code explaining how judgment lines work. I locked the door, dropped the key in Bowen's mailbox, and drove to my new temporary situation, a corporate apartment my company kept for visiting clients, which my boss Sandra had generously offered me for, as long as you need, honey. At 8:47 p.m., my phone exploded with texts. Bowen. What the hell is this, Bowen? You can't be serious. Bowen. That money was a gift. Bowen. Roxy is freaking out. I didn't respond. I was too busy eating Thai takeout and Googling, how long does it take to get a judgment lien in Texas? Turns out, about 90 days if the defendant doesn't contest. And Bowen, bless his heart, was about to learn why you should never underestimate a bookkeeper with excellent record-keeping and a very good memory. Bowen called 47 times between Friday night and Saturday morning. I know because my phone logged every single one. I didn't answer. I was busy enjoying my Saturday morning doing something I hadn't done in months. Sleeping past 7 a.m. without someone banging around the kitchen making protein shakes in a blender that sounded like a jet engine. The texts, though. Oh, the texts. Bowen, 11:34 p.m. Friday. We need to talk about this. Bowen, 11:41 p.m. This is insane. Faye Bowen, 12:03 a.m. You know that money was basically a gift. Bowen, 12:15 a.m. I'm not paying you $20,000, that's ridiculous. Bowen, 1:47 a.m. Roxy left Bowen, 2:33 a.m. She took the sage couch pillows. That last one made me laugh so hard I snorted coffee through my nose. The couch hadn't even been delivered yet, and they were already fighting about the pillows. By Saturday afternoon, he'd moved on to calling Derek's office, which was closed for the weekend. He left 6 voicemails. Derek forwarded them to me with a text. Your ex is something special. Does he not understand how contracts work? He's an electrician who can't wire a 3-way switch without help, I texted back. So no, contracts are definitely beyond his skill set. Sunday morning, Bowen showed up at Henderson and Associates, my workplace, on a Sunday. Because apparently he'd driven by, seen my car in the parking lot. I'd been catching up on month-end closings for a client, and decided that stalking me at my job was a totally reasonable next step. Sandra, who was also there finishing quarterly reports, answered the door. She's 58, 5'0", and has the energy of someone who drinks cold brew like it's a personality trait. She also notarized the promissory note, which meant she remembered exactly who Bowen was. "Can I help you?" she asked, blocking the doorway like a well-dressed security guard. "I need to talk to Faye," Bowen said. I could hear him from my desk. "This is important. It's Sunday. We're closed. She's working. You're trespassing. I'm not. Look, she's trying to sue me for money I don't owe her." Sandra's laugh could have stripped paint. "Sweetie, I notarized that promissory note. I remember it very clearly. You signed it. She loaned you $18,000. It's been over 2 years. That means you owe her, not the other way around. That was for us, for our future together. And yet here you are, having kicked her out of that apartment so you could move in your new girlfriend. Funny how that future thing worked out." I walked to the front door, coffee mug in hand. "Bowen, you need to leave." He looked terrible. His hair was uncombed, he was wearing the same shirt from Friday, and his eyes had that wild look of someone who'd just realized they'd miscalculated something important. "Faye, please, we can work this out. That letter from your cousin, it's excessive. It's legally required. Derek drafted a demand letter because you owe me money that's 4 months overdue. This isn't personal, Bowen. It's business." "Business?" He ran his hand through his hair. "We dated for 2 years. We lived together. You can't treat me like some kind of deadbeat. You mean like you treated me when you gave me 72 hours to vacate the apartment I'd been living in for 3 years? He had no response to that. Sandra, however, had plenty. "Let me explain something to you since apparently nobody else has. When you borrow money, you pay it back. When you sign a contract, you honor it. When you break up with someone, you don't get to pretend debts magically disappeared just because the relationship did. Now get off this property before I call the police." Bowen left, but not before yelling from his truck, "Roxy was right about you." Oh, Roxy. Poor sage green Roxy, who'd apparently spent the weekend discovering what I'd learned over 2 years. Bowen Sterling looked great on paper. Decent job, owned property, 6'2" with nice shoulders, but fell apart the second anything required actual financial responsibility. Monday morning, Derek called. "Your ex hired a lawyer." "Already?" That was fast. "Cheap one. Gerald Martinez from one of those strip mall offices on Highway 121. He sent me an email claiming the promissory note is unenforceable because it was signed under duress, and that the loan was a gift in contemplation of marriage." I almost spit out my coffee. Again. I really needed to stop drinking coffee during these conversations. Under duress? I literally told him he didn't have to borrow from me. I suggested he ask his parents. "I know. I reviewed your documentation. You have text messages from that week showing he asked you for the loan, you hesitated, and he convinced you. That's the opposite of duress. And the gift thing? Texas law is very clear. If you want to claim a loan was actually a gift, you need evidence of gift intent. A signed promissory note with an interest rate is pretty much the definition of not a gift. Martinez is throwing spaghetti at the wall, hoping something sticks. So what happens now? I send a response letter. We let the 30 days run out. If he doesn't pay, we file suit. Should take about 4 months total to get a judgment, then we can put a lien on the apartment. And he can't sell it with a lien on it? Nope. Well, he can, but the lien stays with the property, so any buyer would have to pay off your debt first. Which means no bank will approve a mortgage on it. He's essentially stuck with it until he pays you. This was getting better by the minute. Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the original eviction notice, Roxy called me, my number, which she must have gotten from Bowen's phone. "Faye, hi, it's Roxy. Can we talk?" I put her on speaker while I balanced my checkbook. Multitasking. "Sure. So, Bowen and we broke up. Again. For real this time. I'm sorry to hear that." I lied. "It's just, he told me the apartment was paid off. He said he owned it, like fully owned it. But then I find out there's a mortgage and now there's this debt to you and his credit cards are maxed out and Her voice cracked. I bought $4,000 worth of furniture for an apartment I can't even live in because he can't afford the mortgage payment without a roommate. The math was fascinating. Bowen's mortgage on that apartment was probably around $1,400 monthly. I'd seen the paperwork when he bought it. Add in utilities, insurance, HOA fees, and he was looking at $1,700 monthly for housing alone. My $800 rent had been covering almost half his housing costs. Without me, he was underwater. With a $19,145 debt hanging over his head, he was drowning. Roxy, I appreciate you calling, but this is between Bowen and me. The money he owes isn't going away. Can't you just, forgive it? You guys were together. Can you forgive the $4,000 you spent on furniture? Silence. That's what I thought. Good luck with everything. I hung up. Wednesday morning, Derek called again. Martinez responded. They're offering $10,000 as settlement in full. That's barely half. I know. I'm drafting a counter. Here's my advice. We can negotiate or we can let this go to court and absolutely bury him. Your call. I thought about it. About Bowen showing up with Roxy, announcing I had 72 hours like I was some kind of squatter. About him calling the money a gift after signing a legal contract. About him trying to rewrite history because it was convenient. Let it go to court, I said. I want the judgment on record. Derek laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. Discovery is going to be fun. We're going to request all his financial records for the past 3 years. Can you do that? Absolutely. If he's claiming he can't pay, we get to verify that claim. Bank statements, credit card bills, tax returns, everything. And if he's been spending money on, say, expensive influencer girlfriends, then he's going to have a very uncomfortable conversation with the judge about financial priorities. I smiled. File the lawsuit. But here's the thing nobody tells you about revenge. It's not actually about the money. It's about the moment someone realizes they underestimated you. And Bowen Sterling was about to get a masterclass in why you never, ever mess with a bookkeeper who keeps receipts. Derek filed the lawsuit on Thursday, September 27th in Tarrant County Court. Bowen was served on Monday, October 1st at 7:43 a.m. while he was leaving for a job site. I know the exact time because the process server texted Derek a photo of Bowen's face when he realized what was happening. It was beautiful. Gerald Martinez, Bowen's discount strip mall attorney, filed a response claiming financial hardship and requesting a payment plan. Derek responded with discovery requests, 3 years of bank statements, credit card records, tax returns, and a complete accounting of all income sources. This is going to be fun, Derek said during our weekly Wednesday update call. Martinez is already whining that we're being overly aggressive in discovery. We're just verifying his claim that he can't pay, I said innocently, while cross-referencing Bowen's Instagram posts with dates. Due diligence. Exactly. If he's broke, he needs to prove it. Here's the thing about being a bookkeeper. You develop a sixth sense for when numbers don't add up. And Bowen's lifestyle hadn't matched his claimed financial situation for years. I'd been doing my own investigating. Not stalking. Investigating. There's a difference. Public records showed Bowen had filed for a homestead exemption on the apartment, claiming it as his primary residence, which gave him property tax breaks. Fine. But the county appraisal district also showed he'd applied for a cash-out refinance in July, 2 months before he kicked me out, trying to pull $35,000 in equity out of the property. The refinance had been denied. Insufficient income-to-debt ratio. Which was fascinating because Bowen had been posting about new truck and upgraded tools and taking Roxy to that expensive steakhouse on West 7th Street that charges $85 for a ribeye. The math wasn't mathing. Then there was his Facebook. Bowen wasn't great at social media privacy settings. His posts were public, including the ones from his Sterling Electric Services business page showing completed jobs, big jobs, commercial renovations, whole house rewires, high-end residential work. I started making a list, cross-referencing dates, photos, locations. Bowen had done electrical work for at least 8 major projects in the past 18 months that he'd publicly advertised on Facebook, but never mentioned to me when we were together. I'm a bookkeeper. I know what a W-2 employee makes versus a 1099 contractor versus someone running unreported cash jobs. Bowen's official tax returns, which he'd have to provide in discovery, would show his employment income from Apex electrical contractors. But these Facebook posts? These were side jobs. And I was willing to bet a significant amount of money that at least some of them were cash deals that never got reported. Derek, I called on October 18th, Thursday afternoon. Hypothetically, if someone was doing unreported side work, how would that affect a lawsuit? Hypothetically, it would show they have income they're hiding. Why? Bowen has a Facebook business page, Sterling Electric Services. He's been posting about jobs for 2 years. Silence. Then. Send me screenshots. Every single one. With dates. I spent that entire evening documenting Bowen's digital paper trail. 43 posts showing completed electrical work. Projects ranging from rewired entire kitchen to installed generator system for Hill Country Ranch. Each post had photos, dates, and often tagged the general contractors he worked with. The October 22nd discovery response from Martinez was hilarious. Bowen's tax returns showed $58,000 annual income from Apex Electrical. His bank statements showed regular deposits matching that payroll. His credit card statements showed, well, they showed someone living beyond their means, but nothing outrageous. Except, there were cash deposits, not huge ones, $800 here, $200 there, $600 somewhere else. Always under $10,000, which is the threshold that triggers automatic bank reporting to the IRS. Smart enough to avoid red flags, but not smart enough to realize that a pattern of cash deposits is its own red flag. I created a spreadsheet. Because of course I did. I'm a bookkeeper. Column A, date of Facebook post showing completed job. Column B, approximate job value based on industry standards. Column C, date of cash deposit in bank statements. Column D, amount of cash deposit. 27 jobs correlated with cash deposits within 2 weeks of posting. The math suggested Bowen had been pocketing approximately $23,000 annually in unreported income. This is gold, Derek said when I sent him the analysis. Absolute gold. If we can prove even half of this, it shows he's been hiding income while claiming he can't pay you back. Can we use it in court? We can definitely question him about it in deposition. Where did these cash deposits come from? Why aren't they reported as income? It won't prove tax fraud on its own, but it'll destroy his credibility about being unable to pay. The deposition was scheduled for November 6th, Tuesday at 2 p.m., at Derek's office in Dallas. I spent the week before preparing. Not for my testimony, I wasn't being deposed, but for the satisfaction of watching Bowen try to explain his way out of a paper trail he'd created himself. The night before the deposition, Sandra took me to dinner at Riata, the fancy restaurant in Sundance Square. You know what I love about this? She said, raising her margarita. You didn't get emotional. You didn't yell or cry or do any of that dramatic stuff people expect from a woman scorned. I got mad, I corrected. I got very mad. But you got strategic. There's a difference. She clinked her glass against mine. Men like Bowen think women will fall apart when they pull stuff like that 72-hour eviction nonsense. They don't expect spreadsheets and promissory notes. He forgot I'm a bookkeeper. We live for documentation. He also forgot that you're the one who balanced his checkbook for 2 years. You know how he spends money. That was true. I'd seen every stupid purchase. The $300 sunglasses, the $180 bar tabs, the $2,400 rifle he bought on impulse and used exactly twice. Sandra leaned forward. So what's the end game here? You get your money back and move on? I thought about that. About sitting in that apartment for 3 years. Paying $800 monthly while Bowen treated it like his space, his investment, his future. About him showing up with Roxy like I was disposable. About him trying to claim my loan was a gift because acknowledging the debt was inconvenient. I want the judgment, I said. On record. Official. I want him to owe it legally, publicly, permanently, and then I want to negotiate from a position of power, not desperation. Now you're thinking like a business owner. Sandra smiled. The deposition was scheduled for 14 hours from now. Derek had sent me the question list he planned to ask. It was 47 pages long. Bowen thought he was showing up to negotiate a payment plan. He had no idea he was walking into an accounting audit conducted by someone who actually knew how to read financial statements. I went to bed that night with my phone alarm set for 6 a.m. The deposition was in Dallas, an hour drive from Fort Worth, and I wanted to be there early, not to participate, just to watch. Because here's what they don't tell you about revenge. The best kind isn't loud or dramatic. It's watching someone realize in real time that every stupid decision they made was documented, categorized, and filed for future reference. And Bowen Sterling, electrical contractor and financial amateur, was about to learn why you never underestimate a woman who keeps receipts. Literally. Derek's office in Dallas occupies the third floor of a glass building off North Central Expressway. Professional, intimidating, and equipped with a conference room that has the kind of leather chairs that cost more than Bowen's monthly mortgage payment. I arrived at 1:15 p.m., 45 minutes early. Derek had set up a small side office where I could watch via closed-circuit video. Technically, you're allowed to be in the room as the plaintiff, he explained. But I think watching from here will be more entertaining. Martinez doesn't know you're here. And Bowen? Bowen thinks this is a routine deposition where he'll explain his financial hardship and will negotiate a reasonable payment plan. Derek smiled. He has no idea what's coming. At 1:58 p.m., Bowen arrived with Gerald Martinez. Through the video feed, I watched them enter the conference room. Bowen looked nervous but trying to project confidence. He'd worn khakis and a button-down shirt. Probably the same outfit he wore to job interviews. Martinez carried a thin briefcase that looked as discount as his legal services. The court reporter, a woman in her 50s named Patricia, set up her stenography machine with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Derek entered at exactly 2 p.m. carrying 3 accordion folders stuffed with documents. He arranged them on the table with deliberate precision, each one labeled bank statements, social media evidence, tax returns, promissory note documentation. I saw Bowen's eyes widen slightly. Martinez leaned over and whispered something. Bowen shook his head. Derek began with the standard questions: name, age, address, employment history. Bowen answered confidently. Yes, he worked for Apex Electrical Contractors. Yes, he'd been there for 7 years. Yes, his annual salary was $58,000. And do you have any other sources of income? Derek asked. No. No side jobs? No freelance electrical work? I mean, sometimes I help friends out. Nothing major. Derek opened the first folder. Mr. Sterling, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit A. This is a screenshot from your Facebook business page, Sterling Electric Services, dated March 14th of this year. It shows a completed electrical installation at a property in Westworth Village with the caption, "Another satisfied customer. Full panel upgrade and kitchen rewire completed. Do you recognize this?" Bowen glanced at Martinez. Yeah. That was for a friend. Did your friend pay you? I mean, maybe a little. For materials. How much? I don't remember exactly. Derek pulled out a bank statement. Your bank records show a cash deposit of $1,200 on March 16th, 2 days after this post. Is that the payment from this friend? Martinez interjected. Counselor, I'm not sure what you're insinuating. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm establishing a pattern. Derek pulled out more screenshots. Exhibit B, April 22nd post showing generator installation. Cash deposit of $800 on April 24th. Exhibit C, May 18th post showing whole house rewire. Cash deposit of $2,100 on May 20th. Exhibit D, June 9th post showing commercial lighting upgrade. Cash deposit of $1,500 on June 11th. Should I continue? Bowen's face had gone from confident to pale. Those were just... I was helping people out. And they were helping you out with cash payments that total... Derek consulted his notes. Approximately $23,000 over the past 18 months based on the correlations I've identified. That's about $1,500 annually, which you didn't report as income on your tax returns. That's not... Mr. Sterling, I'm not the IRS. I don't care about your tax compliance. What I do care about is that you're claiming financial hardship while simultaneously operating a cash-based side business that generates $15,000 a year in unreported income. Income you could have used to repay my client. Martinez was sweating. This is irrelevant to the promissory note. It's completely relevant to his claim that he cannot pay. If he has hidden income streams, he can pay. He's choosing not to. Derek wasn't done. He pulled out more bank statements. Let's talk about your spending patterns. In the 3 months before you evicted Ms. Morrison, July, August, and September, you spent $847 at Vaquero's Steakhouse, $623 at Nordstrom, $1,200 at Cabela's, and $380 at various bars and restaurants in the West 7th Street Entertainment District. That's $3,050 in discretionary spending. Yet you claim you can't afford to pay back a legitimate debt. I have expenses. Your mortgage is $1,194 per month. I have the loan documents. Your utilities average $180. Your truck payment is $487. Insurance is $156. That's $2,207 monthly in fixed expenses. Your net monthly income after taxes is approximately $3,150, which leaves you $1,633 in discretionary funds. You could be paying Ms. Morrison $800 monthly, the exact amount she was paying you in rent, ironically, and still have $833 left over. Instead, you've made 0 payments in the 4 months since the debt came due. Bowen looked at Martinez, who looked like he wanted to be literally anywhere else. Derek leaned forward. Let me ask you directly, Mr. Sterling. When you signed this promissory note on May 15th, 2 years ago, did you intend to repay the money? Yes. And when did you decide you weren't going to repay it? I didn't decide that. Circumstances changed. What circumstances? You're making the same salary. You're still doing side work. The only thing that changed is you wanted to move your girlfriend into an apartment where your ex was paying half your housing costs, and it was inconvenient to acknowledge you owed her money. That's not fair. You gave her 72 hours to vacate a residence she'd lived in for 3 years. Was that fair? Martinez finally found his voice. Counselor, my client's personal decisions aren't. They're absolutely relevant when he's claiming the loan was a gift in contemplation of marriage, as stated in your response. If he was planning to marry her, why did he give her 72 hours to leave? Why didn't he discuss the apartment situation with her beforehand? Why did he show up with his new girlfriend and treat her like a tenant with no rights? Silence. Derek pulled out the final exhibit. This is the promissory note. Your signature. Your handwriting. Witnessed and notarized. It specifies $18,000 principal, 5% annual interest, 24-month term. The interest compounds annually, bringing the total to $19,145. It's been 175 days past due. At this point, with statutory interest for late payment, you actually owe $20,123. That number goes up 2.73 every single day. He closed the folder. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay Ms. Morrison the full amount owed, $2,323 as of today, November 6th, plus her attorney fees of $3,400, for a total of $23,123. You can pay it in a lump sum, or we can set up a payment plan of $800 monthly for 30 months. If you default on even one payment, we get a judgment, put a lien on your property, and you won't be able to sell or refinance that apartment until this debt is satisfied. Your choice. Bowen looked destroyed. I can't pay that all at once. Then we'll do the payment plan. $800 monthly, same amount Ms. Morrison was paying you. First payment due December 1st. We'll draft a settlement agreement and file it with the court. If you miss a payment, the full balance becomes due immediately, and we proceed to judgment. Martinez whispered urgently to Bowen. Bowen nodded miserably. We'll take the payment plan, Martinez said. Derek stood. I'll have the agreement drafted by Friday. Sign it, or we'll see you in court. I watched through the video feed as Bowen and Martinez left. Bowen walked like someone who'd just been hit by a truck carrying accounting ledgers. Derek came to the side office grinning. That was even better than I expected. He actually thought we wouldn't find the Facebook posts. He forgot I knew his passwords, I said. I'm the one who set up that business page for him 2 years ago. Derek's laugh echoed through the office. You're terrifying. I love it. So what happens now? He signs the settlement agreement, pays you $800 monthly, and spends the next 2.5 years remembering that 72-hour eviction notice every single time he writes you a check. Perfect. Bowen signed the settlement agreement on Friday, November 9th. Derek filed it with Tarrant County Court on Monday, November 12th. It became a court order, which meant if Bowen missed even one payment, I could immediately move for enforcement and put a lien on the apartment without going back through the entire lawsuit process. The first payment arrived on November 28th, 3 days early. A cashier's check for $800. No note, no apology, just the payment. I deposited it the same day. December's payment came on November 30th, January's on December 28th, February's on January 27th. Every single month, Bowen paid early. Not because he was being generous, because Derek had explained that late payments meant the entire balance became immediately due. Bowen couldn't afford to mess this up. I never responded to the payments, never acknowledged them, just deposited the checks and went on with my life, which had improved considerably since October. I'd moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Arlington, smaller than the place on Magnolia Avenue, but it was mine. My name on the lease, my furniture, my rules. No surprise evictions, no girlfriends showing up with sage green couch pillows. Sandra had given me a raise in December. "You handled that situation like a professional," she'd said. "Most people would have gotten emotional, made it messy. You documented everything, followed the process, got your money. That's exactly how I want my bookkeepers thinking." The raise was $8,000 annually, which, combined with the $800 monthly I was now receiving from Bowen, meant I was actually better off financially than when we were together. Funny how that works. I ran into Roxy in March at a Target in Fort Worth. She was in the home decor section, looking at throw pillows. Not sage green ones, I noticed. Coral, maybe? Hard to tell under the fluorescent lighting. She saw me, froze, then decided to approach. "Faye. Hi. Roxy. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. About everything. I didn't know about the money situation when we got together. It's fine. Is he still paying you?" "Every month." She laughed, but it sounded sad. "He could barely afford to take me to dinner when we were dating. I should have known something was off. He's got 30 months of payments left. Maybe after that, his budget will improve." She nodded, shifted her purse to the other shoulder. "I'm seeing someone new. An accountant. He showed me his credit score on our third date." I couldn't help but smile. That's actually pretty romantic, right? It's like, "Tell me about your 401k contributions, baby." She laughed again, this one more genuine. "Anyway, I'm glad you got your money back. What he did was messed up." "It was," I agreed. "But I learned something." "What's that?" "Always get it in writing." She left with coral pillows and what looked like a new appreciation for financial transparency. By June, I'd received 7 months of payments, $5,600 total. Derek sent me an updated accounting. Bowen had paid $5,600 toward the $23,523 settlement, leaving a balance of $18,123. At his current rate, he'd be done in May, 2.5 years after the deposition. I calculated the math differently. Bowen would spend 30 months, 2.5 years, writing me an $800 check every month. That's 30 monthly reminders that trying to erase someone from your life doesn't erase your obligations to them. That's 30 months of remembering that a 72-hour eviction notice came with a $23,223 price tag. That's 30 months of thinking about his choices every single time he signed his name. And honestly, that was worth more than the money. Sandra asked me once if I felt guilty. "He's paying you for years. Doesn't that bother you?" "He signed a contract," I said simply. "I loaned him money in good faith. He paid me back. That's how loans work. But you could have forgiven it, let it go." I could have. But then he would have learned that breaking contracts has no consequences, that treating people poorly works out fine, and that financial responsibility is optional. I did him a favor, actually. Now he'll never make this mistake again. She laughed. "You're cold-blooded. I'm a bookkeeper. We deal in numbers, not emotions." But that wasn't entirely true. There was emotion, satisfaction, pride. The quiet confidence that comes from standing up for yourself without yelling or crying or setting anything on fire. People think revenge has to be dramatic. Loud confrontations, public scenes, social media call-outs. But sometimes the best revenge is just being right. Having the documentation, following the process, letting the system work exactly as it's designed to work. And watching someone realize, month after month, payment after payment, that underestimating you was the most expensive mistake they ever made. Bowen Sterling gave me 72 hours to leave. I gave him 30 months to remember why that was a terrible idea. Fair trade.